Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today I wanted to talk about something that came to my attention earlier last week, I think, about marketing of books. It has to do with a specific situation where an author admitted to not being completely honest when marketing her book because she wanted more eyes on the book, and I wanted to open a discussion with you guys about marketing of books, lying in marketing. And I know that I've talked about it at some levels before on this channel with a video called like Stop Lying to Me or something like that. I'll link it at the end of this video if you want to check that one out. But I want to talk about marketing and getting books to people and how we talk about our own books as authors, and then as readers, how we feel when we feel like we might have been duped, and also what's the difference between just not being very good at marketing, struggling to tell what your genre is, and then straight up lying about what your genre is in order to sell more books. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. If you would like to submit any topics for me to discuss here on the channel, check out the link down in the description below so we can have more discussions or maybe react or whatever you guys see going around that you might be interested in getting my opinion on. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the other links down in the description below. I mean, I think they're all basically the same, but are in the same vicinity. But there are two ways to be featured on the channel. Number one way is through Lemoy, which is the monthly prompt writing contest where I give you guys a prompt. You write a short story that is inspired by the prompt or use the elements of the prompt. And then first Monday video of the month, we bask in the creative genius of this channel. Hopefully share more in creativity, just have a good time. The second way is if you are an indie author with a book that is coming out or books that are out or a book that is out, submit your first chapter here. It'll be read on the channel, and hopefully it will help other readers find your books. And then if you would like to check out any of my books, they are available down in the description or at any of your favorite retailers or the library. So please check them out. Have a good time. I'm very excited to share some of the great stuff that I think that I'm doing and some of the stuff that I'm doing with my creative partners. So with that said, let's jump into the topic today. Before I get reveal, because I'm gonna have the Instagram page up for this author, this is not about, please do not harass this author. I think though that it is important to talk about these kinds of issues because they affect all of us as readers and as authors, and especially as readers, it hurts the credibility and the trust that we have with authors when, one, they lie to us openly, and two, they lie, period. Like, I'm sure that other people have noticed the creep of specifically romance genre, like nothing on the romance people, but the paranormal romance and the romance kind of seeping into like every other genre, sort of taking over every other genre. And there is this game that is being played with especially indie authors. I don't know if traditional publishers do this, but I know that indie authors do this where they look for categories that are less populated so that they can get a certain number of sales to get boosted to the number one in that category because there's not that much competition, and then they could say they are number one bestseller. That is part of the game. And let me tell you, there are a lot of shenanigans that I don't even know all of the shenanigans that go on, but there are a lot of shenanigans to self-inflate or overinflate personal accolades in order to sell more books or to look more meaningful than somebody really is. And it's all marketing and it's all lying, and it all hurts the trust between the author and the writer, and what should really be happening, especially in indie space, because you don't have the accolades or the marketing money that the publishers have. In indie space, it should be about building relationships of trust with readers. It's one of the reasons that I find it so important to just honestly talk about whatever books I'm reading and how I'm feeling about those books, regardless of what people tell me about you should be nicer or you should not critique indie books to the same level that you do traditional published books, because it'll hurt their livelihood, because they're not the same thing, because you got to be kinder or nicer because they've got fewer resources. Bro, if you are entering the public space, the public arena of marketing and of sales, and you're asking for money for your book, I'm going to judge you to the same level. I hold every book to the exact same standard, and if I read it, if I put my time into it, I'm going to talk about it in the exact same way. I don't think that we get anywhere with understanding and respecting the different manners of publication by saying, well, this one gets special treatment and I'm not going to be as hard on it as this one over here, because already you're lowering the bar, saying that one's just generally not as good, period, and it never will be, so I won't judge it the same. I also don't check whether a book is a small press, a traditional publisher, a hybrid, or an indie or self-published. I just look at books, read the books, and try to grasp what's in them. I don't even necessarily look at the genre, aside from getting a general idea of, okay, magic, okay, romance, okay, nonfiction. Other than that, I really don't pay attention to genre, which is also one of my bads, because genre marketing is apparently a big thing for other people, and it's actually a problem. Where you trick people into buying certain things because of the genre, where you use certain genre tropes when marketing, and there are such big expectations for certain genres that you can get really messy. Like, one of the things that I learned with Bodymore is magical realism, and I knew that going in. But then where do you put magical realism? In some places, magical realism sinks into fantasy, and in some places it sinks into literary fiction. When I was in graduate school for creative writing, magical realism was put into literary fiction. However, at some of the contests that I've looked at, they put magical realism in fantasy, and the people that do the literary fiction don't want any sort of magicalness or fantasy elements in their literary fiction. It is very strict realism for the literary genre. But then you go into the fantasy genre, and there are these expectations of what is fantasy that usually more align with a bigger portion of that club, that usually more align with epic fantasy or high fantasy, and there are big world problems, not singular or human-specific problems or interior problems, which makes it harder because you're not explaining a hard magic system with magical realism, and you're not necessarily fighting some big bad baddie. You've got an interior demon that you're fighting, if that makes sense. So it makes it very difficult. And then you also, on top of what the genre expectations are, it can be really hard to even know what your genre is because it takes time to recognize the elements. So with all that said, genre marketing is important, because why do we pick our genres and why do we put books as genres? It's to find an established readership that is already looking for those elements, that already enjoys the kind of thing that you're doing, and that's how you find them. Say that I'm writing a romantic comedy, and I'm just a little person doing my own thing, and I want to find other people that are going to enjoy the elements of a romantic comedy, then I'm going to want to go into the romantic comedy genre, because there are people already looking for what I do in there. It's just a quick and easy way to start marketing a book to people already interested in those elements, instead of just throwing out a title and then having it float in the ether, and hopefully somebody will find it without even looking for it, without relating it to anything. Genre is a marketing tool just for an established set of tropes, for an established type of story, for an established mood, to find an audience that already vibes with that thing. So then when you lie about your genre, it becomes a problem, because you are making false promises to your readership. Now, that is completely different than maybe not knowing what your genre is, or maybe having a different understanding of the genre, such as putting a magical realism in a fantasy and it doesn't really jive. Or if you do satire and people have a different idea of what satire is, because not all satire is laugh out loud funny satire. There are 3 different types of satire, and I have a video about the 3 different types of satire on this channel if you want to know more about satire, because that was one of the genres that I write. But there's a difference between struggling to discover what your genre is and purposefully misleading about the genre. I know other people who have, I know a lot of authors who really struggle with trying to figure out what genre their book belongs in, because it has these elements and these other elements and this other element and this type of voice, and every little thing in the narrative style helps determine what genre your book would fall into. Because sometimes it's the age of the protagonist that changes it. Sometimes it's the journey of the protagonist that changes it. Sometimes it's the mood of the narrative or the voice of the narrative that makes it immature, that changes it from being an adult to a YA, because that voice, or a new adult in some cases, because that voice isn't fitting for the age group that you're reaching. But a main character who is 9 years old doesn't automatically make something a middle grade book either. So how do you learn all of these things? Well, you kind of just read a lot, and you study the general elements of those genres and find out what people like and what typically fits into those genres, which can also cause problems with people trying to get into genres that have a lot of money in them, but they are not interested in writing that genre. And romance has this issue. It's no secret that romance is the biggest, I'm pretty sure it's the biggest commercial genre. There is so much money in romance. Romance readers are passionate. Romance readers have a lot of love. Romance readers can burn through books so fast because they just love to read them. So there is a ton of money, and there is a huge passionate fan base. So a lot of people try to get in on that passionate fan base, and so people want to misappropriate titles sometimes in order to get in on that bigger dollar amount. I've seen other authors say that they were going to mislabel their books in certain genres because that's where the money was at. And so then we have what's happened with Amanda Woody recently. And I will look forward to your thoughts on what is being discussed here, and if this is a misinterpretation of what's going on. It doesn't seem like too many people on her Instagram are upset about it, but I want to know what general readers think versus what an author's individual followers think So let me know what your thoughts are on this situation as you get more information about what happened. That said, a couple days ago, Amanda Woody posted, with They Hate Each Other coming out in 29 days, I want to clarify something important about the book before too many people decide to read it. I've been marketing They Hate Each Other as a rom-com about two grumps who are so sick of their friends trying to set them up that they decide to fake date to prove their incompatibility. I do this because it's quick, punchy, and prioritizes well-known tropes for people scrolling quickly. So keep that in mind, as she did this on purpose. I chose to market it this way because it was quick and punchy and works on social media, is what she's saying. But They Hate Each Other is not as fluffy as its outer pastel appearance indicates. There are a lot of darker themes and scenes that some readers may find upsetting. I'm going to go over some things that may be particularly difficult for readers to get through. So she says, I knowingly made this look punchier, made it look lighthearted, made it look more playful than it actually is. I marketed it as a rom-com, even though it is much more serious than that. If you are a rom-com reader or enjoyer, do you find this appropriate? Because for me, these two tweets say, I mismarketed it on purpose because I knew that I would get more attention, but I'm also actually selling something that is opposite of what the promise is it's not as fluffy as you would think, which kind of breaks the contract from author to reader when you say, I'm marketing something that is contrary to the genre in which I stuck it in on social media. This is Jonah. The graphic is lighthearted, but this situation is anything but. At 17, he has become the sole provider to his little sister due to an alcoholic father. He has been forced to grow up too quickly. Child neglect is dominant theme and conflict in this book. And then pointing at this character, you've got a picture from the cover, which is very much in the style of the YA and the romance that is going around right now for the rom-coms, like red, white, and royal style. A lot of YA romances have this bubbly, playful cover style as well recently. And it's got a pointing arrow at him saying, what filter, perpetually screaming, slutty for the stars, stubborn bitch, protector of little sister, needs a nap. So yeah, that is very lighthearted and is more like me quirky. This is Dylan. Again, the graphic seems lighthearted, but his issues run much deeper. Dylan deals with nightmares, panic attacks, and PTSD from an accident related to abuse from his past. Mental health and confronting your trauma is a major recurring theme and conflict. So that doesn't sound at all like a rom-com, actually. They Hate Each Other largely explores the pain from childhood trauma and neglect, how it impacts the main characters differently, and how they come to slowly lean on each other through their fake dating schemes. There is some fluff, but it is not a fluffy book. So it's not actually a rom-com, which then tells me that she completely mismarketed the book because it's not a rom-com at all. This is the same level of disrespect to the readers as taking a Colleen Hoover book like The Cycle Ends With Us and calling it a romance, when it's actually not a romance. It's maybe women's fiction, it's maybe a drama, but it's not the light, fluffy thing that you're selling it as. A lot of these themes are listed at the front in the content notice, but if you don't typically look at those before buying a book, or if you get a book based on how cute the cover is, you may not be aware of some of the hard-hitting topics covered inside. So, not only is your genre part of your marketing, but so is your cover. Your cover should give an idea to the theme, the vibe, the feel of your book. So if you put a nudie guy cover on your book that is pretty typical for maybe erotica or romance, and then inside it's Stephen King, you're gonna have people be mad. Or, you know, switch that, is have a Stephen King style cover and then inside it is literally erotica. You're gonna have people mad. I've recently talked about this, and I've seen discussions on this with how erotica authors are moving away from having the obvious covers that say, hey, this is a romance, hey, there is steam in here. In some cases, I mean, in some cases, they go over the top with making sure that you know there is steam in there. But they have other things like with Guns and Smoke / Leather and Lace, where they're trying to hide what is inside of the book. And that becomes a problem when it's on a backlist alongside a YA, where the smutty book looks just like the YA book, and you've got no difference between them. Your cover should prepare the reader for the type of book that is there to the best of your abilities. And so if you know that your book is dark, but then you specifically pick a cover that looks like it's rom-com, you are dressing your book to lie to your readers. And why is that? I can only guess it's to make money off of that bigger base that is the romance base, as opposed to whatever else genre this might have been put in. Amanda's final tweet on this says, all of that being said, They Hate Each Other is still a rom-com. Does it have dark, tear-jerky moments? Yeah, but still, you'll still find several tropes that hopefully balance it out. If you do decide to read They Hate Each Other after you learn about this, link is in the bio. So there are expected tropes if you're doing a rom-com. And this doesn't tell me if it ends darker, if it has a happily ever after, if it has a happy for now, which are kind of requirements for the romance genre, the big romance genre. And I know that there are people who are not involved in the genre or who are kind of trying to appropriate the genre because they want that money, but they don't want to write the happily ever after. Maybe there are other reasons for it, but I've seen some conversation from people that are like, I don't write in romance, but I think it's stupid that they have a happily ever after. Why are you opining on a genre and how a genre is appreciated by the readership that go there specifically for the tropes and say the tropes should change when you're not even part of the target readership? Now, like I said, I don't pick up books based on genre. I usually don't even pay much attention to the genre when I pick up books. If you look at my backlog on this channel, I read all over the spectrum of the types of books that I will pick up, that I do pick up, that I talk about. But a lot of people do lean on the genre or lean on the age category of YA versus adult, which at this point, I think YA is just a trope-chasing genre, not necessarily an age bracket anymore. But that's another story. Why do people do this? Because it obviously works. Is if you get your book out in front of the most amount of people, even if it's covered in lies, you're still going to get a number of people that defend it one way or another. That's all that matters. Look at what happened with Sarah J. Maas's book being propagated as a YA and then later being switched to an adult, because you can get more eyeballs on that book as a YA because of the popularity of YA, even if it's inappropriate, and then say, oops, sorry, and then move it. Well, you've already made that money. You've already made that reputation. It's about making the money. It's about making the splash. It's about getting the attention. The same thing I feel like happened with Colleen Hoover, where there are a lot of people who absolutely abhor Colleen Hoover because of her books not actually being romanced, but being sold as romance. I don't know if that is Colleen Hoover's responsibility or if it was the publisher that did that to her books and she just has to go along with it. I don't know, but there are plenty of people that have criticized her for not actually writing romance and then selling it as romance. And why would this happen? Because there is big money to be had in romance. And at this point, when you look at all of these things where somebody is lying to get their book inside of a genre that their book probably shouldn't be in, it's just about tricking readers, and it makes an adversarial relationship between readers and writers or publishers because you're just trying to trick people into buying your book instead of selling your book on the merits of the genre that it is written in or the merits of the story itself. The video on this channel where I've talked about this before includes stuff like Among the Hunted, where the author, it feels like the description of the book purposefully left out part of the inciting incident, because if they included that, it would have turned a bunch of readers off. But then you end up startling the readers with those things, And it's important to say those things are in the book because it is literally the inciting incident. What am I talking about with Among the Hunted? Well, Among the Hunted is a story about like Greek mythology and fairies of sorts, nymphs, I think it was, and the Greek gods who get high having sex with those nymphs. And the story starts because the main character falls for a couple of these Greek gods, and she and her friend are invited to meet them after a couple of months. And the main character watches as her friend gets raped and murdered by these gods that also want to do it to her. Now, the problem comes when the synopsis of the book says the main character witnesses her friend get murdered, but not raped. Even though the rape happens at the same time, and even though the driving force for the antagonists of that book the entire time is rape, and the main character will be threatened with rape 3 or 4 times. I did a review of Among the Hunted here on the channel if you're interested in seeing how that book played out. But rape plays such a big role in that plot, yet it was left out of the summary. And so this is what you end up seeing people being mad about in the comments, and why I picked up the book, because I saw people complaining about the rape, and well, why would people do that? Because you specifically have that part left out of the synopsis. And I've seen more than enough requests and requirements for book submissions to not have any sort of sexual assault in them whatsoever. It's one of those touchy subjects that some people just don't want to touch. And so you know that if you put that in the blurb for your book, it's going to turn off a lot of readers. So instead you end up hiding it, and it lies. And then you surprise people with it when you did not give that warning. And there's no way to get around it when you mention part of the other half of the inciting incident from that same blurb. Another way is, I think there's just bad blurb writing. There's just bad blurb writing, because writing your blurb is hard. But one of the other series that stands out to me was Threadbare by E.L. Ayer. And I read all 3 books in that trilogy. And the descriptions for the plot summaries basically start 50% of the way through the book. So like the whole first 50% of the book isn't even what starts the story, isn't even really the inciting incident, isn't even really included in the plot summary that is then on the pages to sell you the book. You have to get 50% of the way through. So that doesn't feel so much as lying or erasing things from the plot summary as much as it feels like just not being very good at writing copy. And it can be really, really hard to write a good copy for a blurb. I'm not dismissing that at all, but there is a difference between mismarketing your book, mislabeling your book with the genre so that you can make that money, lying in your synopsis, or just writing a bad synopsis. And I don't think that it's helpful for anybody to be purposefully shoving your book into genres where you know they don't belong, because you've just told me as a potential reader that I can't trust you, that you will lie to my face to get me to look at your book. As an author, and maybe this is just a me thing, but your word is all that you have. Your book is you promising to tell me a good story. Your cover is a promise to me. Your synopsis is a promise to me for what is in those pages. And if you outright lie to sell me things, I'm not going to trust you as an author. And I don't like the practice of lying. I don't like the practice of authors scratching each other's backs in order to lie about each other's books to sell more books. Because again, it turns it into a contest, or an adversarial relationship with readers, instead of trying to reach out to readers and build a relationship with readers who like what you're doing. I know it's the marketing thing to do, because marketing doesn't care really about ethics. It doesn't care about morals. It cares about the dollars, the dollar signs. You are just a consumer to take the product, but I don't like that, which is why I will probably always be poor. But I wanted to open a conversation here about mismarketing books, about misclassifying books, about lying to readers. Are you a reader or even a movie viewer who has been lied to through marketing about what a book or a movie is about? How did it make you feel? Do you still trust that person? Do you think that this is that much of a big deal when authors misrepresent their books in order to get more attention on them? Or do you think it's really just not worth talking about at all? Who cares? Because clearly there are all sorts of people. I'm not going to criticize somebody for not knowing their genre and for trying to figure it out and taking their time and trying different things out to figure out where their base is, because that is so incredibly difficult. But this is something different to me, and I just don't like it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, this is just to start the conversation about marketing practices, because marketing practices, I'm not a marketer, and I know so much marketing is about lying. That's why I'm never going to be a marketer. But I still want to talk about these sorts of things and get the conversations going, and see where y'all are at with stuff like this. I hope it doesn't bite me in the butt. With that said, I'm looking forward to your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?